Hello, everyone. We're glad to see you today, and we're just excited to have you join us for the Nice Wonder Remote Learning Series. These sessions, we hope, will provide educators with opportunities to extend and refine their practices, engaging students in remote and online learning. We hope we can showcase high-impact practices and model strategies, share resources, and highlight ways to facilitate effective remote learning. Although you will see that many of the strategies and resources we share are applicable to in-person traditional learning. My name is Catherine Edwards, and I am not really co-presenting this afternoon, but I'm happy to be here, and I would like to introduce Sarah Kitzmiller. Sarah is the lead on this, and she's got a world of knowledge and is an extremely experienced coach. And so, Sarah, we're ready for you.
Well, thank you all. I'm just going to refresh our memory here just for a second. If you want to unmute yourself and jump in with a question or something you're wondering, please feel free to do that. I always need this reminder for myself, no matter how many times I use Zoom. But don't forget that if you double click the screen, you can go to full screen, and that's the same for an escape to go back. I always forget that one for whatever reason. And just drop any questions you have in the chat. Speaking of that, at the end of this, I will drop our materials list in the chat. They have been uploaded to the website, but I also have a link of all of the videos and articles that we used in this presentation. So again, my name's Sarah Kitzmiller and Catherine Edwards, and we worked on this Checks for Understanding, and this is the third in our series of 4. So just simply put, collaboration means working smarter together rather than harder alone. Easy peasy, right? Especially now as we're in our classrooms, digging into what virtual means and what that looks like. We'd like to think that this is someplace we can get to quickly, but it is a little harder right now. So what kinds of collaboration have worked for you? Do y'all have anything that you all have tried on or seen teachers do that has been effective? Feel free to unmute. I don't know about you all, I've seen some people do Socratic seminars in the middle school classroom.
Sarah, I've worked with several groups of teachers. They've really used their digital platform even prior to this COVID craziness, and they've had a lot of success using OneDrive for professional development as well as for accessing student material.
And OneDrive, that's a Microsoft product, correct? That's cool. I would love to see that. I haven't had the opportunity to see that product in use for that purpose.
Yeah, it's kind of nice the way that you have the ability to organize with like different tabs, so different sections. You can do it by date or different content. Like I said, this particular group, they were using it both for their own in-building professional development, but they had another way for their students to also access it for student viewing.
Right. So our session goals today, teachers will develop an understanding of the planning considerations collaboration requires. We'll build knowledge around strategies for effective student discussions, and then we'll have a better understanding of the relationship between student collaboration and writing outcomes. And for lack of a better phrase, we could even call that writing outcomes, which we use to determine kids' ability to have mastered the content we've studied in our units. So the essential components of student collaboration: create learning activities that align to lesson objectives, prepare students to be a part of a team, and that's easier said than done, I know. Minimize opportunities for free writing, and focus on strengthening and stretching student expertise. But the one we're really going to focus in on today, because obviously in 30-minute session, we will not be able to become proficient in 5 of these. So we're going to focus on this one, build in many opportunities for discussion and consensus. So the experts really have a lot to say about this. And classroom discussion has a 0.82 effect size on student performance as compared to, say, project-based learning, which has less than 0.5% effect on student performance. So 0.82 is a pretty significant impact when you think about the end of the year results for your students and their ability to have had plenty of opportunity to have classroom conversation. But in other words, students' thoughts and explanations can propel the learning of other children. And in these interactions should be understood more broadly as sophisticated enactments of cognition and not simply as a market for the trading of ideas. So, you know, it really is an opportunity for kids to show and share what they know. And if they don't know, we hope that they're hearing the words of their peers and they're learning from that. And this came from the Fisher, Frey, and Hattie, The Visible Learning in Literacy book that I don't know if y'all are familiar with, but I've really enjoyed reading it. I think I actually have it here. If I find it, I'll show you. So what are some strategies? Here are 2 strategies for classroom discussion that we're going to talk about today: Go, Go, Mo, and Chalk Talk. And we're going to watch these 2 videos first and then have a discussion after, just to make sure we have enough time to have conversation about it. But while you watch these videos, and we'll watch one and then have a pause and then watch another, I would like for you to reflect on these 3 questions really. What did the students do? What did the teacher do? And at what point during a unit or a lesson in your mind, would this strategy be good to use? So as you're watching this and you're seeing it kind of unfold, thinking about what are the kids doing, what's the teacher doing, and where would this be good to use in a lesson or in a unit?
The Give One, Get One protocol is going to allow you to give some of the information you have just learned in your expert text, as well as get a piece of information that you did not read about, that somebody else did. We're going to share information as a way to study right now. Give One, Get One, Move On, or Go, Go, Mo is a protocol that allows students to share, review material that they gathered. I'm going to ask you to write one new piece of evidence you have learned about metamorphosis. Students start Go, Go, Mo by writing down one piece of evidence that they have learned or have reviewed during that class period. We're going to pass our clipboards in just a moment around the table until they are completely filled with information all about the topic.
Metamorphosis.
Thank you. Students are required to read all the pieces of information that have been recorded and add something new each time. Okay, please finish your word and switch papers again. Each person can give a piece of information, and when the students receive their paper back, they will have a worksheet full of information based on that topic. You have now a document filled with information that is going to help you study the topic of metamorphosis. And so we are going to take this one step further, and we are going to have a give one, get one mingle. We are now going to gather information from everybody in this whole room. You might want to bring along some of your text because they might help you give one. We're using the same exact worksheet, but this time you're going to interact with 9 different people in this room.
I learned that metamorphosis is mental and physical changes.
When a frog is fully developed, it goes and lays or fertilizes eggs.
Go, Go, Mo promotes equity and inclusion in a classroom by allowing all students to interact with every single person.
This process may take a few days or several months. As we move around, we can give out some of this same information, and that makes us memorize the information more.
Every single student is addressed and provides an answer. This ensures that students read and listen to what all other students have recorded.
Metamorphosis has two changes. We are able to interact with our peers more than we would if we would have just did a regular review, which I think helped us be more focused and engaged into the subject.
At 10 weeks, the tadpole's lungs are fully functioning. Like when it's just a teacher talking, you're not as focused.
The egg, the larva. We do something that's fun. We'll remember it because it was fun.
Today's students used Go-Go-Mo to review content, and they left with information that they could go home and study. You're studying, you're memorizing, and you're practicing. Not only is this a document for you to take home and study, you're going through a study process right here.
All right. So, when we think about checking for understanding, we may or may not have associated it with peers checking in with each other. And I think that this in middle school is something to consider. But as you could kind of see in that video, there were some heavy structures in place that really made that conversation possible and successful. So we have one more video with another quick strategy that I'm going to share. And I would like for you to consider the same questions. What did the students do? What did the teacher do? And at what point during a unit or lesson would this strategy be good to use? And we're going to reflect on both of these strategies at the end of this video just to make sure we have time to get through.
The protocol that I used in my classroom today is Chalk Talk. It is a discussion protocol that allows every student in the classroom to be heard.
I like the Chalk Talk idea of us being able to comment silently on whatever we wanted to. The good thing about it is that everybody got a voice and we each got to put our ideas out.
I thought that it was less time consuming because if everybody wanted to share, it would take the whole class time.
Everybody gets to say what they want to say without talking over each other or a person not getting a chance to say anything.
I not only have the students answer the questions, but I have them comment back to each other. That's important too with the Chalk Talk. Whoever wrote this comment, they might not have felt comfortable in doing so in a verbal discussion, but they were able to in the Chalk Talk.
That one person got to fix that other person's mistake instead of everyone correcting that person and putting that person on the spot.
I was able to put many stars and question marks on people's papers.
So they may star something that they agree with, question mark something they don't understand, or write an actual comment. And that allows for a conversation between students where they may be able to deepen their understanding or push each other's thinking without me.
It's really helpful to get everyone's idea out because everyone has a voice.
Okay, 2 more minutes. The goal of Chalk Talk is to put students in the driver's seat so that they're learning with each other instead of just with me. All right, if you have not made it back to your seat yet, please do so. At the end of my lesson, it's important for me to look at each of these posters. I'll take a look at what students wrote, specifically any misconceptions that I'm seeing, and that's what I'll focus my future lessons on. I wanted to be able to hear all of your opinions, which normally doesn't happen if we have a class discussion. And if you look on the board, I'm going to review all the information and determine the next steps for our learning tomorrow. I thank you so much.
So, I am kind of curious what your thoughts are about those protocols that we looked at related to checking for understanding and collaboration. What are you thinking?
Sarah, I think both of them are extremely student friendly. They're organized to where, you know, there's control, but it's almost a form of scaffolding. The students can start with, maybe they don't think they know some, but they can pull at it. So it's very student friendly.
Yep, I agree. And it's kind of like you said, sometimes before we really start to give more freedom with classroom discussions, it can be better to start out with a heavy protocol kind of way to discuss so that that kids don't kind of free for all, or there's that one group that's sitting in the back due to not being able to get to them, that kind of thing. Do you see this transferring well to a virtual setting? What are your all's thoughts on that?
Well, while you're thinking, someone put in chat, Tracy did, that it was formative. I like that word.
I really liked what the lady at the end of the last video that we watched talked about, that she used those posters, and it made me think of, and we're going to get more involved in some of the digital platform transitions of these kinds of protocols, but it made me think of that Jamboard that we did towards the end of our last coaches meeting, and I loved how she used it. She used the Post-it notes as a way to know where she needed to start her instruction for the next day. So sort of that, like you said, formatively, the diagnostic component of what are my next steps as a teacher, and she uses that feedback to do that. Oh, and there, I see there's chat. I'm sorry, I always want to, I don't mean to not see it. It's just hard sometimes for me to get up there without.
Well, Candace just brought up in the chat that she was literally typing Jamboard when you said it. So I think we all really like that one.
Yeah. Yeah, and who doesn't like their idea being starred? Exactly. It's like another way to sort of like have that little social emotional component built in and have a response. I think that's cool. So student discussion is the bridge to writing success. And I don't know about you all, but I definitely feel like that there's this common instructional misconception that I hear a lot, and it's my kids can't write, particularly in the middle school realm. And when students struggle with expressing and writing what has been taught, it sounds like my students didn't say very much in their writing that is important to what we've been reading about in our unit. You just might hear people say, my kids can't write. Teachers will say, we have studied this for weeks and students aren't writing or asking questions about the topic. And it looks like in the student work piece, it lacks academic and shared knowledge vocabulary that's really required to master unit content. And there are too many sentences without enough important information, or there's just not enough writing to grade. But really what this is indicative of is students may have not spent enough time in collaborative discussion using the language of the discipline they are expected to master in writing, in particular in middle school. And just as much as we'll hear students can't write, you'll start to hear in September, teachers will feel very stressed about giving middle school kids conversation time or discussion time because they don't understand how to control it. And they don't know how to teach that protocol. It's something we have to teach. So these are things we can do pretty easily. We can ask kids to diagnose each other's writing by reading to improve the paper, reading to know the writer, reading to diagnose the problem, or just reading as a common reader, like as if I was in a doctor's office and I would pick up a magazine article. How do I just respond? Do I have a response to this? Is it interesting? Does it hold my attention? These are all things that we can ask kids to read, to diagnose for. And it came from, and I've linked it here, the Institute for Writing and Rhetoric. It's out of Dartmouth. And then how do students respond to their diagnosis? Respond by reflecting on what the writer is trying to say. Respond by summarizing the argument, by predicting the argument. Respond by asking questions. Respond by labeling problems or making suggestions. And I think if we move some of the conversation that we put on ourselves to students having these conversations, I feel like we're going to be able to see stronger pieces of evidence in student writing. In fact, I don't know if any of you all are familiar with this, but the Tennessee writing rubric, which I know we all have used, a lot of teachers I have seen actually make copies of the students' writing, staple it to the rubric, highlight the area for next steps, and then return the paper. But because that's so time and labor intensive, a lot of times the student doesn't get information back soon enough to be able to do anything about it. So one of the things that I've seen teachers do is put in peer feedback on the writing as a step to get to some of those pieces. And again, it's scary, but it really can elevate the level of work that you're going to get when you finally get it to provide more descriptive feedback as you move closer to the end of the unit. So how does collaboration really improve writing? And I didn't make these up. Again, this came from, and I'm gonna show this article to you. It's in your list of materials. It came from the Institute for Writing and Rhetoric. And actually most of the information from this section came here. So I've included that in the PowerPoint and in the materials doc. So you'll have that if you would like to use it with teachers later on or with your team members. So how does collaboration improve writing? It gives students practice in analyzing writing. It's easier to see where classmates' writing is going awry than it is to find flaws in one's prose. I mean, I definitely feel that as a writer myself. Collaboration encourages students to talk about their writing, and in peer review sessions, students have to field questions about their writing. And also, collaboration helps students to understand writing as a process and to increase their sense of mastery of what is often a complex and difficult task. It's the best way to learn. The best way to learn something is to teach it, and when instructing their peers, students learn how to improve their own prose. So when you kind of think about what we've been talking about students have to have conversation with each other. If we're going to ask them to write, for their writing to get better, they're going to have enough of that core conversation around what they're reading to improve. If we want their writing to show what they know, truly show what they know, we're going to have to make sure that those opportunities work hand in hand with both the reading and the writing process. Are kids talking enough about what it is they're reading to build shared knowledge? And are they talking enough about what they're writing to hold each other accountable to that knowledge that we all know that we're building? And so that process really supports two things. It supports the student's ability to master the content. It also supports the classroom culture that we are learning something that's important, and we're going to hold each other accountable for what we're going to have to do next, because it's important. And then finally, when the teacher gets that paper to grade, they're going to see a tremendous increase in students' ability to communicate what they know. So before we recap our learning, I want to show, I do want to show you the materials document just so you'll know what you have. So in your materials today, you have the Institute for Writing Rhetoric article. You also have, and I've just left it here since this has been a part of our whole process, the instructional strategies, the NIET guide, the companion for virtual instruction, because it does nod when you read feedback, when you read standards and objectives, pretty much all of the categories have a nod to checks for understanding and best practice. Then we have the two strategies, Go, Mo strategy and the Talk strategy video I have linked here. And then you have the bit.ly of our presentation as well. So this materials link, I'm going to copy here for you. I'm going to copy this link for you and drop it into the chat. Did that show up to everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So now that you have a copy of that, you'll be able to get to those materials and to the strategies. The strategies came from Expeditionary Learning, which is a free, it's a free website that has curriculum material. And just so you know, it's always so hard for me to choose. There are 62 student talk discussion protocols on this website. So if you create a login for yourself at expeditionarylearning.com, it gives you access to 62 student talk protocols that you can use with kids if these two in particular didn't speak to you. And we were talking as we watched the video a little bit today about how these can translate into a virtual platform. And so our next session is going to be just about that. how checks for understanding is utilized in a virtual classroom setting. So let's go back.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
If you were sharing this presentation to colleagues and other teachers later on, what activities would you use in this presentation to try to engage them and try to get them thinking on this topic? Have you thought about that?
Yes. I would, it just depends. If you have a scenario that fits, it's always good to use that relevant context, especially if it's like a scenario where the teachers have been talking. Are you talking about when I'm using it to support in coaching?
Yeah.
Like if there's a scenario that you've been hearing about, and a lot of this connects to that, I would start with the one that's most relevant to your teachers. But if there's not one and you just want to start getting them to think about how to support student discussion, and one of the concerns could be classroom behavior, I would absolutely start, because again, and I don't know if this is relatable, but a lot of times I hear the reason that students aren't collaborating in the classroom is because of student behavior. Is that something you all have heard before too?
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and I think that teachers, especially, and some personalities are more open to it than others, but you can feel like it's a loss of control, and you've got to keep telling yourself that sometimes learning is noisy and messy, and if the principal walks in, if he's any good, or the observation or evaluator, he's going to walk around and see what the kids are doing, and so you shouldn't be frightened of that.
Well, and that's why I would probably start with a strategy that has a pretty simple protocol like Go-Go-Mo, or like the Chalk Talk, which probably would translate pretty well right now to a virtual classroom setting, because it's going to, Jamboard, you could use Jamboard as a way to end, like as an exit ticket almost, to kind of prepare for what do my kids know about what we talked about today, or even during classroom instruction. Where are we, if you showed a video in class or in science, I know that was where the subject they were using, you could even show a video and then have them use the Jamboard as a way to share something that they learned. And I liked how they were, and I think Tracy was talking about this, how they put a star next to the kids' fact that they liked. And again, it's a way for kids to feel like they've been recognized, which in this virtual world, I don't know about you all, but my personal children, they're craving attention from their teachers and from their peers, and honestly really look for opportunities to engage in seeing what their peers are doing. If you have a group that is pretty familiar with classroom discussion protocols, the next thought that I would have is to think about how are they utilizing peer discussion around student work. So are they given opportunities? And I liked what she was saying. She said, you need to talk, I think it was in Go-Go-Mo, she said, you need to talk to 9 people. You could very easily allow kids to share their work with you could either do it or have the kids do it, let them have opportunity to write responses to people's work that they're sharing, as a way to kind of just be seen. And again, I know it seems uber critical because it's online, but it's really not. And that's something you're going to have to really consider as you're building your culture in your virtual classroom, whatever that looks like. Now, Tracy, is Sevier County back in full session? Are they 100%? Oh, wow. So you're like 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh my gosh.
Yes, some students were able to choose to go virtual, but the majority are in the classrooms, in the buildings, and teachers are all there, but some are doing Google Meet from home to watch the teacher like that.
So is the teacher that is like the homeroom teacher, is that person doing virtual and is?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. There may be 3 or 4 across the county that are solely virtual because of health concerns or whatever, but most of them are doing both, which has added some juggling to an already kind of messy year,
Sure. Wow, I didn't realize that they were doing both. So the good news about that, though, is if you're out sick, you just get onto the digital platform and keep following along as best you can, or watch the pre-recorded stuff, which makes it easier because the way it is in my district, we have a virtual learning that has a completely different platform than what the kids are getting face-to-face when they're on, they're virtual right now, but they're getting the teacher where we're getting a virtual platform. So that makes it harder in terms of pacing. So we have to wait 9 weeks with our Odyssey Wear before we can jump back into the face-to-face. So there's going to be a little bit of a time shift there. But if I was working with a teacher, I would want them to start probably, Catherine, to your question, I would want to start probably here with something that there is maybe a brick and mortar example, and then get them to think about how you could translate that into a virtual setting. And then as they get closer, obviously as we get closer, especially in ELA and social studies, as we get closer to the end of the unit, it really doesn't have to take that much time. They could even have partners or do some partner work, thinking about giving them an opportunity to collaborate around their writing. I think that's going to be helpful. And it relieves the stress of the teacher having to be the one always giving the feedback, and it helps support social emotional as well. So just recapping our learning, what's something you learned today, and how do you see yourself incorporating collaboration and discussion into your daily instruction, and how is writing connected to student collaboration? Feel free to reflect in the chat or unmute. I've enjoyed our time together, and like I said, we have one more session. We have one more session in our
series.
In our series, and it's next Thursday from 3:45. John, do we need to do an evaluation?
No, Sarah. This is it. So no, the answer is no.
Okay, good. I just didn't know. I didn't know if we should do that or not. All right. But we appreciate everybody being here and look forward to seeing you next Thursday, which, can you believe it, is going to be September the 3rd at 3:45. And we're going to basically take what we've had from the first 3 sessions and translate that into what it looks like in the virtual world with some products that are easy and free that can turn this stuff into online stuff.
Tracy, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you so much, Tracy, for coming. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You are so welcome. Catherine, you came to mine too, so thank you.
Well, I enjoyed it too. It was very good. It was very good. And John.
So our last session was about collaboration too. So now I see, the ties together there. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
All right.